Welcome back to the bottom of the fourth here at Minute Maid Park. Pretty quiet evening here in Houston with a sparse crowd scattered around the stands on this muggy night. The weather might be keeping some fans away, but the action certainly isn't lacking. Carlos Beltran stepping up to the plate for the Astros in the first pitch. Just outside for ball one. Beltran now a 1-0 count coming up to the plate again, ready for the next pitch. A high fly ball deep to left center field. That ball is going. Oh, it's gone! A home run for Carlos Beltran.
Tony Adams stretched back into his office chair and rubbed his palms into his eyes. He rewound the clip to confirm what he heard. There it was. Undeniable. 2 bangs back to back before each pitch to Beltran. Adams, who was a web developer and a diehard Astros fan, was in denial when he read the bombshell New York Times report. A former MLB player had blown the whistle on the Houston Astros. The player alleged that the team had engineered a blatant sign-stealing cheating scheme in which an off-field player would use on-field video cameras, a trash can, and a baseball bat to signal to the batter which pitch was on its way. Adams' inclination was to side with management. They were the data-oriented visionaries who turned the formerly flop team into World Series champions in 2017. The Astros were the target of an unfair allegation, the front office said. Their success was attributable only to their cutting-edge proprietary technology and their forward-thinking operations. They were just really smart. But Adams was smarter. Locked in his office, Adams reviewed and analyzed hundreds of hours of gameplay. He created software that tagged the unusual sounds. Often they were masked by the roar of the stadium, but sometimes they were embarrassingly conspicuous with a scant crowd. He compiled the evidence. 8,700 pitches, 1,100 bangs. He bought a domain name, signstealingscandal.com, and published his verdict. You can draw your own conclusions, he wrote, but it was clear. Astros management was lying. What Adams didn't know at the time was that the Astros cheating program was the symptom of an even bigger scandal. This is the story of what happens when a sleazy billionaire gets their grubby little hands on a Major League Baseball team and reimagines it as a late-stage capitalism fever dream. It's what happens when management is hypnotized by Mckinsey and their brains are so fixated on shareholder value maximization that they become willing to do anything to win. Unfortunately for the MBA-pilled baseball business boys, their strategy was a total whiff. And it ultimately cost the city of Houston much more than a championship trophy. This is the Corporate Gossip Podcast, the Houston Astros, Mckinsey strikes out.
Hey, this is producer Mike. If you want to binge all of season 4 right now and not have to wait for weekly drops, head over to our brand new Patreon, patreon.com/corporate gossip. All audio and video are up there right now for the entire season. Plus, not only can you binge the entire season, there'll be discussions with Adam and Becca about each episode. So head over to patreon.com/corporate gossip and sign up now. All right, let's get into the show.
Speed.
Welcome back to the Corporate Gossip Podcast. I'm your host, CPA scorned, Becca Platsky. I'm here with my co-host and my brother,
Data analytics playboy Adam Platsky.
And producer Mike. Here we are talking about the Astros, and you might be thinking, why is the Corporate Gossip Podcast talking about sports? I didn't send you to go-kart camp, you might be saying. And at first, I thought the same thing. But as I dug deeper, I realized that a baseball operation is, or at least it can be, as corporate as any other organization. We got a lot of the same players, no pun intended, as we see in other episodes of this podcast. We have the piggish billionaire owner who kind of sits in obscurity and uses the team in various self-serving ways. And when he should be held accountable, he eagerly steps out of the way and kind of throws any nearby body under the bus. Then you have the smug, egotistical general manager. This is kind of like the CEO of the team. Once they're in place, they clean house of anybody who knew anything about baseball, hire Mckinsey, and promptly Jack Welshify the entire team. And then you have the CEO or general managers, they're fawning underlings, right? Who they're taking advantage of the cutthroat culture. They're clawing their way to the top. They're enthusiastically disregarding any organizational norms or culture that has been established in this sport that's centuries old. And then, of course, the players who are kind of caught up in a no-win situation where they have to cheat and win, and winning is all that matters. And obviously, it wouldn't be a good corporate gossip episode without the heroes of the story, the whistleblowers, the journalists who had the chutzpah to stand up to power. And so I think this is going to be a fun episode because the story arc is so familiar, but the content is pretty unique compared to other episodes that we've done. And so what we're going to do with this one is we're going to meet each of the key players, dive into their own personal drama, and then we're going to kind of bring it all together and talk about the scandal. And, you know, like we like to do, we like to see the threads. We like to see their motivation. What brought them to this point of doing the fraud?
Yeah, think about it like a hot dog with all your condiments, your mustard, your relish.
I love that metaphor.
Yeah, and then you're going to have a beautiful hot
experience
dog together.
Yeah.
At the end of this.
Oh, you know what I didn't add to this, but I think is a fun fact that everybody should know is that Adam and I used to work at our hometown baseball stadium. We were both working in the concession stand. And if you wanted a $1 hot dog, you'd come up to either one of us and we'd give you one. So we know what we're talking about when we're talking about hot dogs, okay, people? The book that we read for this episode is Winning Fixes Everything by Evan Drellich. I also watched The Astros Edge, which is a great PBS documentary that's available for free on YouTube. You ready to get into the corporate gossip of it all?
Well, one more thing about how we discovered this. I knew about the Astros cheating scandal. I'm an avid baseball fan. I actually read this book, and within the first lines of this book, it's got a great point about what happens when Mckinsey takes over a baseball team. And I was like, oh my God. I was reading this for my personal enjoyment, and I was like, this is going to be great for the podcast. So I wanted to just say that.
It's a good point. You ready to dive into the gossip of it all?
Play ball!
Good job.
Bam, 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 bam. Can
we add
baseball?
Add things in post.
Add things in post?
I'm sure.
So you're in for a great listening experience. Yeah. So corporate gossip number 1 is Jim Crane, owner of the Houston Astros, is business ick personified. One thing we need to explain is baseball team ownership and what that actually entails before we dive into the owner of the Astros, Jim Crane, who I can only describe as giving me the heebie-jeebies. So for all of our billionaire listeners out there who are considering purchasing a baseball team, here's how you make that happen. And we're going to take the Baltimore Orioles as an example. They agreed to a sale earlier this year to a guy named David Rubenstein. He is the billionaire founder of a private equity firm called the Carlyle Group. He bought it for $1.725 billion from a guy named Peter Angelos, who bought the team for $173 million in 1993. He died like a month after this deal was inked, but damn, what a return.
Yeah, baseball valuations and sports team valuations in the 21st century have gotten crazy. Another good use case is the Los Angeles Clippers, which FX is making a documentary about that story with Donald Sterling and his racist comments.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. If you're a billionaire and you want to make an investment that's almost guaranteed to have a pretty significant return and one which you can take massive tax write-offs for, and we'll get into the motivation for Jim Crane and why he bought this baseball team, but like buying a baseball team is a pretty good bet. David Rubenstein, for example, once he takes over, he becomes responsible for the Orioles' overall operations. He hires the people who make up the front office. The front office is basically anybody who's not playing baseball or involved in the game, but they're also involved in player decisions. If you want to upgrade, move stadiums, if you want to, they're in charge of the entire budget, maintaining enough cash flow, and hopefully you can make the franchise more successful and almost guarantee you don't have to do much to make your baseball team more valuable when you sell it compared to when you buy it. So Jim Crane is going to be the second MLB team owner that we met on this podcast. We also covered Ted Turner and his on-field antics when he owned the Braves from 1976 to 2003. Jim Crane will not be as lovable as Ted Turner, though. In fact, he's a real piece of shit. It's crazy. Ted Turner comes up on every episode we've done. Practically every episode, it feels. So Jim Robert Crane is born in 1954 in Missouri. His dad's a life insurance salesman and his mom's a grocery store clerk. And he plays baseball. He plays baseball at the University of Central Missouri, and he gets a degree in industrial safety. And you'll find this field of study very ironic soon enough. Sadly, his dad died when his dad was 48 years old and when he was in college, and then his baseball coach kind of became his surrogate father, and then his surrogate father died too. So that's a real bummer. But on his college graduation day, his mother apparently gave him a bill for $220, which is all the support she had been giving him over the past 4 years. And he said, "That taught me the value of $1." Okay, we love a story. So, on this podcast, we love to trace the threads, and we don't have much on Jim Crade's childhood trauma aside from the death of, his two father figures.
And his mom penny pinching every dollar out of him after college.
Yeah, seriously. But we'll see his obsession with counting every penny in his piggy bank will show up later in life. So he moves to Houston in 1980. And in 1984, he borrows $10,000 from his sister. Not a meaningless sum of money. I'm not sure where she got that money from. But he starts a company called Eagle USA Air Freight. Eagle USA. I absolutely love that name for a company, like American Bald Eagle Incorporated. By 2000, Eagle had $1 billion in sales on their air freight logistics operations. And after a few mergers and acquisitions that made Crane a paper billionaire, he cashes out. He sells the company and he founds this other company, Crane Worldwide Logistics. He's great at naming his company things. I gotta imagine at this point, Crane is in a tough position. You're the billionaire owner of a logistics company that, according to their website, provides, get this, customized supply solution and intermodal transportation. But here's the thing, whenever you go to parties, no one wants to talk about logistics management. Supply chain isn't sexy. It's not cool. It's not going to get you into Michael Rubin's white party, that's for sure.
That's for damn sure.
So what's a billionaire with no redeemable personality traits, no hobbies to talk about, supposed to do? You buy a baseball team. By the way, I'm not exaggerating here. This is a thing. One of the main reasons these billionaires buy sports teams or they invest their money in venture capital is so they can have something to talk about in lieu of any authentic hobbies or interests. So in May 2011, Crane makes a successful bid for the Houston Astros for $680 million. Yeah, he lived in Houston, but he was just interested in being in this very exclusive club of 32 people who owned a baseball team. He tried to buy the Cubs, he tried to buy the Rangers, and he had previously tried to buy the Astros before this. So he was just like, I gotta get in there somehow.
It's a common thread with billionaires who buy these teams. I know of one who doesn't even live in the city in which he owns the team.
Yeah. One episode we should do, or maybe a mini episode we should do, is the way that billionaires use sports teams to reduce their tax burden. And on top of that, they get this really cool experience of owning a sports team because they've done analysis. ProPublica has done analysis where these billionaire owners pay less in effective tax rates as LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, any of the players.
Which I think you'll talk about soon, right?
I don't think so. I don't think it's in this episode. Can you tell us this fun fact about the Astros, actually, about their stadium?
Oh, their stadium? Yeah. So it was built in around 1999 or 2001. And actually, the original name was Enron Field.
Isn't that crazy?
Because we talked about in the Enron episode how downtown Houston was really just a hub for Enron. And Enron was really trying to make downtown Houston a poppin' place.
Yeah. And so you have, again, the confluence of Mckinsey, Enron, these billionaires.
You know what it was called before that?
What?
Bernie Madoff Park.
In 2002, they changed the name, obviously, to Minute Maid Park. So Astros, meet your new baseball daddy. And unlike other billionaires we've covered in this podcast, he doesn't have a sordid history of unbridled racism and misogyny, right? You guys checked his Twitter posts, right? You called people from his old company? You did your due dilly-dong? No! You'd think that the MLB of all places, given the diversity of the teams, the fact that this is America's pastime, they wouldn't sell this team to a guy whose company instituted illegal policies that, according to one lawyer, was one of the worst cases of discrimination he had ever seen. But like Scott Disick in a Las Vegas restaurant, Crane shoved fistfuls of money into the mouths of his would-be critics, and they said, what discrimination? But don't worry, though. We got the receipts. And this is what it was like, allegedly, to work for Crane at Eagle USA. Quote from one of the people who worked there. Eagle USA's workforce is primarily white and male, a profile that is known as, there was a name for it, you guys, the program.
By the way, anything named the program, I'm realizing is not a good thing.
What was the other program?
The program on Netflix, which is about taking kids away from their homes.
Oh my God.
And basically militarizing them and trying to beat them into submission. Yeah.
The EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, it's the thing that basically ensures that everybody, no matter their race or gender, has equal opportunities for employment in America. They allege that Eagle USA has failed to properly investigate allegations of sexual harassment, failed to discipline wrongdoers, failed to protect employees from sexual harassment. Witnesses allege that high-level managers of Eagle USA used corporate money to entertain male clients with female prostitutes and nude female dancers and wrote the expenses off as a business expense, but in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it was the 90s, and it was Houston.
I mean, shit. They
rubbing
must have been
elbows
working with Enron.
Yeah.
Because they were probably transporting a significant amount of oil around Houston.
Logistics.
Damn. We just blew that shit up. So others allege that the company refused to hire people of color and maintained a hostile work environment for those groups. Eagle's chief executive, Jim Crane's program is to rarely hire African Americans, not hire women, get this, unless they were attractive.
9s and 10s only.
Was this the INSIS hiring management theory? Another former employee who is a manager of HR, which I'm shocked they even had one, alleges that she was demoted to secretary for refusing to implement the discrimination policy. She was replaced with a white guy who did it instead, and he made 5 times her salary. Responding to these allegations in 2000, so obviously these allegations were public before he bought the team, he says, "We have done nothing wrong." Another director at Eagle who would join Crane as the CFO of the Houston Astros said, "Oh yeah, if we treated employees as they claim we would have, then why would we have been so successful?" Which is like, what the fuck? That's an insane defense. If that wasn't bad enough, the U.S. government would also bring charges against Eagle Logistics for war profiteering, alleging that they were raising prices in Iraq illegally. This led to fine and jail time for some of the employees.
Except Crane.
Except for Crane. So how did he get past the MLB sniff test? Because here's how you buy a baseball team, guys. When you want to buy a baseball team, you basically just go up to the current owner of the baseball team and you say, "Can I buy your team, please?" And they go, "Sure." There's no due diligence. There's no structure or committee or anything. It's just one guy selling his stuff to another guy.
Well, there is a structure and committee. Before the sale goes through, actually, the other owners need to agree to let them into their coveted club because it's a profit sharing model. Is how the MLB functions.
So in addition to just that owner, you also have all the other owners who are also just old white men just like you.
Yeah, shockingly, they're all old and white.
Is there any baseball owner that's not a white male?
Magic Johnson, he is a leader of a group that owns the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Okay. But so 31 of them are old white men.
There might be a few more
minority owners,
but I would say 90% of them are white. This is not particular to just the MLB. This is how the NFL runs as well. And I think a few other sports leagues where it's because it's profit sharing, all the other owners have say in who is allowed to own a team and if the offer is good enough.
It's crazy. You would think the fans would be involved. You would think the players would be involved.
But most important thing is that your offer is strong because, if Baltimore sells for $1.75 billion and they're a mid-market team, I have the Los Angeles Dodgers and we're a major market team. And if that's the only comparison, that team's got to sell. That makes my valuation much higher.
So you're incentivized to sell to the highest bidder no matter the skeletons in their closet.
Exactly.
We should note, speaking of which, Crane is not the only racist owner of a professional sports team. Notably, you said they were doing a documentary about this, but the LA
documentary and FX style, like the O.J. Simpson show. It's gonna be scripted.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So LA Clippers' Donald Sterling was forced to sell his team and was banned from the sport after he made racist remarks on a hot mic. It's worth pointing out, especially because it is a business that makes most of its money from the labor of black and brown athletes. And apparently Crane knew that his past might be held against him, but rather than like take time to address any biases he might have, hire an expert, guide him through best practices, here's what he did. According to one Astros employee, he requested that they hire black people so he won't get written up. Then when discussing the competency of another employee, Crane said, "We can't fire black people." So Jim Crane really belongs up there with the big turds of corporate gossip lore.
The Mount Rushmore.
Yes. We should do a corporate gossip Mount Rushmore. And you guys are going to hate me for this one, but this is a picture of Barack Obama during a golf game in 2013 with Jim Crane and Tiger Woods at the Floridian, which Jim Crane also owns. There's 2 episodes this season where you're going to learn some cringy things about Obama. And maybe we were too young to understand this during his presidency, but I think that's okay. I think part of this podcast is putting these CEOs and these companies into the larger historical context. And this is that context. And if I'm giving Obama the benefit of the doubt, I think he wanted to play golf with Tiger Woods, like who wouldn't? And they just had to have the owner of the golf club tag along. But then again, according to Golf Digest, Crane is rated the best CEO golfer at one point, which is like, what are we doing here at Golf Digest? And so that's the maybe Obama wasn't as perfect as we like to remember minute. And now I'd like to share a crazier story.
I haven't seen this, so I'm excited to see it.
Okay. In 2019, Jim Crane's ex-wife, a woman named Francie Neely, had a full-blown Karen moment caught on camera, made the news, the whole thing. Do you want to watch it?
I love Karen moments.
This woman, identified as Francie Neely, screams at the couple for taking pictures in Broad Acres, telling them to leave.
Wait, I didn't see the video.
I couldn't find the actual original video. I think it's more or less been scrubbed from the internet. I could only find clips of the video on the news. But yeah, the couple...
So she's a racist.
I mean, the couple and their child, who we should note are black, were taking photos of their daughter on her first birthday on a public esplanade near Rice University. Here's a quote. This is from the news. 30 minutes into Saturday's hour-long photo shoot for the baby, the parents said that a woman walked up out of her Jaguar convertible barefoot with her Pomeranian in one hand and cell phone in another and told the couple that they were on private property. About 3 minutes of cell phone video captured only part of the confrontation, but you can see the woman swat at the father's phone more than once. So she posted an apology video, like classic. The police did investigate this as an assault, but I don't think any charges were filed.
Damn.
But that just goes to show you this guy, this is his wife. Or his ex-wife, rather. I mean...
One of many, I'm sure.
What are the conversations that they're having?
You know, I bet you Jim Crane could field a baseball team with all his ex-wives.
So he actually has 3 ex-wives, but I want to talk about his 2007, his latest wedding, as a palate cleanser. So go to the next picture, Mike. If Sheena Shea actually had the budget that she had dreamed of, this would be the wedding that she would put on. This is Jim Crane and his 4th bride, a woman named Whitney Wheeler, being pronounced husband and wife at the Floridian on a dais covered in bouquets of baby's breath flowers. And the craziest part is they're situated between 2, 10-foot swans?
At least.
Seemingly also made of flowers. I mean, this has got to be $100,000 flower arrangement.
You know what would be better is if they were between 2 cranes.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking.
Allegedly, this wedding cost 7 figures. And it's one of the fuggliest things I've ever seen. And apparently this wedding date was the makeup date. The original wedding was scheduled for a month before, but guests were told 2 days before it was scheduled that it was called off because they hadn't nailed down the prenup yet. So Bruno Mars was scheduled to perform at their actual wedding, and then he couldn't make the makeup date. Anyway, if we go to the last picture, here they are doing well. Here they are at a Texas Children's Hospital fundraiser at the very swanky Post Oak Hotel in February. I gotta imagine Real Housewives of Dallas. There's a crossover as well.
Yeah. She would have been great.
Okay, you ready for corporate gossip number 2? Corporate gossip number 2 is that guy qualified to be a baseball executive? No, but he did stay at a Holiday Inn last night, played lots of fantasy baseball, and of course, he worked at McKinsey. So other than Jim Crane, the other main character in this story is Astros general manager Jeff Luhnow. When the dust settled on the Astros cheating scandal, it was Luhnow, not Crane, who would be synonymous with the controversy. Can you explain, Adam, what a general manager actually does on a baseball team?
Yeah. So the GM is a pseudo CEO, or is the CEO of the baseball team. When it comes to the team, he's building the roster. He's involved in contract negotiations, signing free agents, trading players, but he's also in charge of the budget. So player salaries, operational costs, manages salaries of other people in the front office as well. And then he's responsible for the long-term success of the team. So he's thinking about how do we build the best team for the future, identify where the team can improve in like talent evaluations, and then beyond that, he's the face of the team to the owner, to the fans, and to the media.
I didn't realize that he's actually not involved in the game itself. Like, he's not making any decisions about who's playing where on the roster, who's sitting out. That's all the manager's job.
Yeah, but some GMs, because they design the roster, have say and preference on how the team should be played.
So let's meet him. Here he is, receiving the 2017 Esurance Executive of the Year Award, brought to you by the MLB. So Luhnow was born in 1966 in Mexico City. His dad has like a dream job. He's like a travel guide writer who moves the family to California from Mexico when Luhnow is in the 11th grade. And I was shocked when I watched the Astros Edge documentary, and he's speaking fluent Spanish. And I was like, well, who the heck how did he learn fluent Spanish? And that's why, because he's born in Mexico. Spends his childhood in Mexico. But he played a little bit of baseball in high school, nothing to write home about, but he's super smart. He goes to Penn, gets a dual diploma in economics and engineering. He gets an MBA from some school, is it Northwestern?
Somewhere in Evanston.
I've never heard of it. So Luhnow is now a freshly minted MBA in 1991, and baby, the world is his oyster. He could go anywhere, but he goes where any chino-clad Ivy Leaguer would go. Mckinsey. He gets a job in their Chicago office, and he learns the Mckinsey playbook. We have a mnemonic, guys, for your business school kids who are out there trying to learn business. Here's what Mckinsey does. Old F, or fold.
Or fold.
Or dolph. Offshoring, layoffs, downsizing, and fraud.
In any order.
In any order. Fast forward to 1999, and my guy is on the partner track of Mckinsey. And he sees this giant bubble forming in the distance. He stares at it for a few minutes, too long, and he's hypnotized by the dollar signs in his eyes. And he steps into the light and he says, must join internet company. So he joins petstore.com. He becomes president of marketing, and he leaves when the company, literally the perfect time, was purchased for $10 million in the year 2000 by Pets.com, and well, we all know how that ended. So then he joins this analytics company, and while he's learning analytics, he also is reading this book that came out around the same time in 2003 called Moneyball by Michael Lewis. This was a tome for people who liked baseball and also liked math. It is the story of Oakland A's general manager who used analytics and predictive modeling to find value in baseball players where maybe they had been overlooked. And leading to the success of the Oakland A's, it's also a movie with Jonah Hill and Leo DiCaprio?
No, Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. And Jeff's looking through this book and he's spellbound. He's obsessed with Moneyball. He uses it on his fantasy baseball team, and he won't shut the fuck up about it at work. But he ends up winning his fantasy baseball league. And like any other grown-up boy, he goes, oh my God, you guys, I'm like really good at this. Like, I should do this for real. And for normies like me and you, Adam, you came to me and it's like, I should manage a professional baseball team. I'd be like, get a grip, grow up. But when you're an ex-McKinsey guy, all you have to do is look through your alumni magazine and
your Rolodex.
Your Rolodex. I always forget about the Rolodex. And call up an old colleague. He just happened to know the son-in-law of the guy who owned the St. Louis Cardinals named Bill DeWitt. We always talk about LinkedIn privilege on this show. Like, we see this a lot with Nepo babies where they're so rich they don't need a LinkedIn. I think this is McKinsey privilege. You just have these access to this high power network that opens up literally any door you could possibly want. So Luhnow joins the Cardinals. And when he gets there, he realizes that the majority of the people who are working in baseball had been there for decades. And they're ex-coaches, ex-players, scouts, and sometimes they've been working in baseball for 2 or 3 generations. And he shows up and he's like kind of representing this new generation, this post-Moneyball generation of baseball employees, analytics, data, computing. And these guys who are working there are kind of resentful, a little resistant of the things that he brings in. And to Luhnow's credit, he's ahead of the game. Analytics was the future of baseball, but there's 2 approaches he could have taken. He could have sat back, he could have learned from them, respected them, and then kind of slid in some analytics here and there. Or you could just bust open that shit like the Kool-Aid man and say, "What up, dumb fucks? Move your shit off my desk. I need room for my Dell." Don't be mean to me or call my friend whose dad owns this team. The option that he chose was closer to the latter than it was the former. But yeah, DeWitt loved Luhnow, and he was kind of openly favorite towards him. And he kept talking about how Luhnow was an agent of change, which like really pissed off the rest of the front office. And this is where we start to see Luhnow's management style, which is to say he was a total prick. He started to oversee scouting in 2005. And one Cardinals exec threatened to kick his ass if he ever showed his face in his office. Luhnow builds up the Cardinals' analytics capabilities. He brings in a lot of guys from the outside, outsiders and consultants. And one thing he's really good at, which makes me cringe to say, is valuing a player. He's literally taking this human being that he's seeing as an asset and building out a return on investment on that player. This approach to see every player as a number was, quote, Luhnow's greatest achievement in St. Louis, according to the Cardinals general manager at the time. And Cardinals do well while Luhnow's there. They win a World Series. It's hard to know how much could be attributed to Luhnow.
They won twice, didn't they?
Yeah, they did win twice.
Sure.
I think.
Whether Luhnow was responsible for the success or not, he would have you believe he was. In a sense, he's shouting it from the rooftops. He's described by a former St. Louis exec as a total self-promoter. You ready for corporate gossip number 3?
Strike 3.
Jeff Luhnow, newly appointed general manager of the Houston Astros, is the manager of your nightmares. A pinch of Patrick Bateman, a dash of Todd Packer, and a sprinkle of Elon Musk. So in 2011... Luhnow joins the Astros as general manager, and he hands out copies of Who Moved My Cheese to all the front office staff. Have you ever heard of this book?
Yes.
You were too young. Oh, no, you know this book.
Somebody gave me this book.
At work? Do you know this book, Mike?
I read it a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's a really popular management book from the 2000s. It's like an allegory that's supposed to help you reframe and accept change in your life. Every CEO in the 2000s ate that shit up and handed it out after every reorg or every layoff. It's so condescending, and it basically gaslights employees into thinking that like any feelings of discontent they have after like a big layoff is just them being resistant to change. Scott Adams, who wrote Dilbert, and he's problematic in his own right, but he did have a good criticism of the book. He called it a patronizing message for the proletariat to acquiesce. So yeah, if your boss ever hands you that book, run. And it's not going to surprise you that Luhnow is a terrible manager. He's unclear, he's unreachable, he's bad at communicating, he doesn't take accountability. In researching, have you ever seen a worse manager?
This guy is a top offender. My jaw was on the floor.
I was like getting anxiety thinking about working for this guy. And to make matters worse, he just starts firing people with abandon. He like works out with the strength coach Wednesday and then 20 minutes later fires him. The former Astros bench coach said, "Let me tell you something. This guy is the most cold-hearted person I ever met. If he had to fire his mother, he would." I'm curious, do you think he's so focused on the end goal here that he doesn't realize how many enemies he's making?
He's completely blinded, absolutely.
Or do you think he doesn't realize that baseball is different than like a tech company? Or maybe I'm giving him too much credit and he's just selfish and doesn't care?
No, I think he's just blinded.
So if you weren't fired by Luhnow and you did stay employed with the Astros, good luck paying your bills. Jeff Luhnow's favorite time of the year was the presentation he got to make to Crane. And remember, Crane loves penny pinching, but he got to go to this presentation where Jeff Luhnow shows off the fact that the Astros had the second to lowest cost of the front office salaries. And Astros employees said that ownership fucking ate that shit up. And that's because most of the people that were working in the front office are misfits. Like, they're just happy to be here. Mm-hmm. They don't know how much they should be paid. They're just excited to work inside a baseball stadium. This is their dream job. There is one luxury that Luhnow did open the Astros wallet for. Mckinsey consultants. He'd bring them in, ask them, hey, how could we streamline operations? And obviously, whenever you have a group of suits camping out in a conference room by the GM's office, it's going to create paranoia among the front office staff. The funny thing is, Luhnow basically just asked them to validate the decisions that he had already made. I mean, we see this all the time with CEOs. So Mckinsey comes in and say, yeah, good idea to fire an entire scouting organization. Source, trust me, bro.
This isn't an LBO. It's a ball club. I don't know what Luhnow was thinking with this move. The closest Mckinsey gets to a baseball game is sipping Macallan out of a souvenir cup in a luxury box during a client meeting.
Not watching one out.
Not watching one out, right?
The interesting thing is he got McKinsey for a steal. He paid them $100,000 a year for services, which is nothing. And I think what happened here is McKinsey took this on likely as like an investment project, which is if a consulting firm wants to get into like a new industry or something, they'll take these clients on at low cost just so they can put them on their resume. Say like, hey, we worked with the Astros before. And they were probably also excited to go work for a baseball team. Yeah, I mean, the Glassdoor reviews of working at the Astros stadium have got to be awful. Everyone's terrified of their jobs. They're putting player health at risk. The CEO is a maniac. Oh, yeah, and your team sucks. The Astros ended the 2014 season second to last in their division with a 70-92 record. You ready to move on?
Yeah.
Corporate gossip number 4 is Jeff Luhnow and the curse of the fraud triangle. So when someone's about to do fraud, this is my favorite subject. Let me settle in here. I like to imagine it like Indiana Jones, and they're up against the wall, and they finally uncover the golden fraud triangle. Opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. And it's like, this is the solution to all of my problems. The fraud triangle, for the uninitiated, are the psychological elements that are almost always present when somebody commits a white-collar crime. It's opportunity. So I know how to do this. It's rationalization, which is what I'm doing might be bad, but I'm justified in it. And it's pressure. If I don't do this, something bad might happen. We all know rationalization isn't a problem for Luhnow. He's shown that he doesn't really care about the rules to get what he wants. He's got pressure. The GM role in the organization, we learned, is the long-term success of the team. And since Luhnow has been running the Astros, they had finished last in the division 3 times and second to last in the year before. So that's his pressure. And now we have our final element, opportunity. And wouldn't you know it, in the 2015, the MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, basically all but takes the opportunity and lobs it over to Luhnow.
Yeah, we call this a softball in the biz.
In 2015, Manfred takes over as commissioner of the MLB. He's a Cornell grad. He's a labor relations attorney. And he's made his bones negotiating during drug testing for the players during the steroids era. You'll never guess what this guy does first. It's almost comical. He hires McKinsey for a reorg. This must have been the big job that they had wanted and like why they did that investment client. You know, we worked for the Astros. Right. Now we can work for the MLB. So he decides, and who knows how much influence McKinsey had in this decision, to modernize the game. Baseball is very popular in the US, but there is an opportunity to broaden its appeal to younger generations and their TikTok-addled attention spans. And Adam, you talk about the pitch clock, which has really improved the game.
Yeah, I love the pitch clock. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you went to a baseball game in the past, it was like 3.5 hours. You guys listening know. Now it's the average time is like 2.5, 2 hours, 45 minutes. So it's really picked up the pace of play, and it's been a great move by Manfred.
And the other thing he does is allow for instant replay so that coaches can challenge calls. This kind of drums up the energy and excitement in the game as well. Like you building some suspense. And I suppose it's more fair too, right? But to do this, you need to update the replay technology by putting high-tech cameras all over the stadiums so teams can have access to all these different angles during the game. The Astros, they took it one step further. They spent $500,000 to upgrade the video systems at Minute Maid Park. So they can have a 360-degree view of everything that's going on that field. And almost right away, there's rumors that teams are going to use this new technology to treat by incorporating it into their sign stealing strategy. So really quick here, let me just explain sign stealing. So when you are pitching to a catcher, the catcher needs to know what ball you're going to throw so he can put his mitt in the right place. And in order to do that, the catcher who is squatting down will kind of give you signs. He's maybe say 1, 2, 3, 1 is a curveball, 2 is a fastball, 3 is a breaking ball, whatever. And the pitcher will nod, yeah, I'm going to do that one. If there is a baseball player on second base, right, so directly in the line of the catcher, they could hypothetically see those signs and communicate to the batter, he's going to throw a fastball, he's going to throw a breaking ball. And that's when you'll see catchers kind of do like 1, 3, 4, whatever, all these different signs, and only the pitcher and the catcher know which sign to listen to. And just to make it clear, if you're a batter and you know what pitch is coming, if you have successfully stolen their signs, that's a massive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I just explained, sign stealing, is legal. Like people, it's part of the game, really, right? It's legal when it's done just with your eyeballs. You're not supposed to use these new video cameras to give you a bigger advantage.
The line in cheating and not cheating is the inclusion of technology.
Yes.
Once you include technology, that's the line. That's cheating.
Because you can steal anything in any sport if you do it through instinct.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
skill and speed.
You can tell whether the offense is going to run or pass just by the pressure on the fingers of the guy. You know,
Right.
That's legal. You see it, you do it. But technology is where they screw everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage when you sign steal using technology. And in 2015, if you would have asked Luhnow, nobody deserved that advantage more than the Astros. Ready for corporate gossip number 5?
There's no crying in baseball.
I thought we were going to do this in post.
I'm just adding it so we know.
Okay. Corporate gossip number 5 is Astros get trashy. By 2016, the infrastructure that would support the Astros cheating scandal was being put in place. And right before the start of the 2017 season, the Astros did some redecorating at Minute Maid Stadium. An intern mounted a television in a tunnel right outside the dugout, the Astros dugout. Allegedly, this was at the direction of Alex Cora, who's a bench coach, and Carlos Beltran, who's an outfielder. And now their home stadium cheating system was in place. And here's a description from the book, Winning Fixes Everything.
Stationed across the TV were some massage beds, and during games, chairs. Astros players and staff would sit there and scribble signs on pieces of paper, using their eyes to decode what the signs the catcher was giving were in real time. Once the signs were decoded, the Astros in the tunnel told the hitter what was coming by making a noise. They experimented with clapping, whistling, and yelling before settling on, of all things, banging on a trash can, often with a baseball bat. No bangs typically meant a fastball was coming. 1 or 2 bangs signaled a breaking ball or changeup.
So I'm going to play here an example of the Astros communicating with their batter via a trash can. And it's crazy how obvious it is. So this is from 2019, so a couple years after this happens. But this is a tweet from a guy called Tyler Talk Sport. And he compares one player, what's this guy's first name?
Jose Altuve, his home batting average versus his away batting average. So home, obviously, they're using the televisions and they're using the banging on trash cans. And away, they're not able to do that. At home, he has a .472 batting average. Away, he's got a .143 batting average. The most important statistics here is OPS, which is on base plus slugging percentage. It is the most important statistic when you're analyzing the value of a player. His home is 3 times more than his away.
So can you guys who know baseball better than I explain to me how abnormal this is to be so much better home than away?
It's not abnormal to be better because that's what the home field advantage. You're just used to the field. You're used to playing. That's where it's just more comfortable. But these stats are through the roof.
I mean, here's the crazy part of the story is the cheating worked. Astros won 101 games in 2017. They finished first in the American League West. They went on to beat the Dodgers in the World Series and become the champions. And this is a huge moment for the city of Houston. I remember this. I was rooting for them because just a couple months prior had been Hurricane Harvey. And it was like, oh man, the city really deserves a win. I was happy that they won. This is Jim Crane accepting the World Series trophy. All right, let's talk about when the scandal was uncovered. So corporate gossip number 6 is, this is a stretch, but putting the ass in Astros. So basically, as soon as the 2017 season wraps, everybody's talking about electronic sign stealing, but not with the Astros. It was the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees who were found to have engaged in sign stealing, and they were fined by the MLB. Investigations after the fact would reveal that those sign stealing schemes from those teams were much smaller in scope than what the Astros had been doing and until this point had gotten away with. Manfred, the commissioner, issued fines to these teams and instituted a new rule prohibiting electronic sign stealing. So if you were a rule following person, you'd be like, oh, we got away with it this year. We got to stick it in the trash can for next year.
And that was supposed to be the line in the sand that Manfred thought he put in. It was obvious, electronic sign stealing. But the Astros didn't take it that way. They kind of read between the lines.
You know why? I think they missed that memo because they were too busy nursing their championship hangovers to pay attention to these new rules. They had to go to the White House. They had to go give Trump an Astros jersey with his name on it. And I know you're asking, I mean, Luhnow certainly seems excited to be there. Oh, there's Kate Upton's husband behind him.
17. Just like the number of people around me in my cabinet that are in jail.
You might be wondering whether Luhnow is a Trump supporter. Here's a quote from one of his colleagues.
Jeff's a rich white guy. Of course he's a Republican.
So Crane and Luhnow took to the podium and they gave themselves a huge pat on the back. Luhnow's like, we had a vision in 2011. We implemented these radical ways, but at the end of the day, our goal was to win a championship as soon as possible and build an organization that can compete for multiple championships, and we did it. No mention of a trash can, no mention of sign stealing, just his vision.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jeff Luhnow, the consummate self-promoter.
Exactly.
If you think we cheated, well, you could just throw that theory into the garbage, huh?
Corporate gossip number 7 is the fallout. And if you hate Jeff Luhnow, now's the time to grab the popcorn. So there's 2 parts to this piece of corporate gossip. The first is how Luhnow acted when he was on top of the world after his World Series win. And the second is how he acted when the MLB started investigating whether they had engaged in any funny business to get there. Now, most GMs after a season where they come out on top, after years of finishing at the bottom of the pack, are like, we cannot rest on our laurels. We've got to prove that this wasn't a fluke. So you think Luhnow would be as involved in ever. Like, he was a micromanager. He should have been in every meeting, getting excited. But no, not Jeff. By 2018, buoyed by a title bump to president of baseball operations and a hefty raise to about $7 million a year, he decided it was basically the right time to quiet quit. He spent...
Suck on that, Kevin O'Leary.
That's right. Kevin O'Leary would say, if you're a quiet quitter, you're a loser. Which I wouldn't apply to any circumstance but this one. He spent most of his time on corporate speakers circuit or relaxing in Mexico. Here's a quote from an Astros executive. After we won the World Series, he changed a lot. He started to come into the office at 11 on most days. On days that he would come in late, one of the lower level operations members would turn on his office lights so it looked like he had already been there.
I heard he was taking liquid lunches.
Oh, 2 martini lunches?
At least.
So the one thing he does do is hire back Mckinsey. He asked them another brain buster. He's like, guys, we gotta move our data to the cloud.
There's this thing called the cloud I'm hearing about. How do we get the data from in the computer to the cloud?
Now, we sell on a USB flash drive in our team store. Can I put it on that? So Mckinsey says, and here's a quote, by the way, from an office exec who's involved in this. And it's like, this is like the sort of business people do where they just tell you the obvious because they have MBAs, so you listen to them. which is like spot on. And wouldn't you know it? You know who just got into the cloud game? Crane Worldwide, the business that Jim Crane had started. They just started getting into software development. So the Astros look no further. Not like there's any other tech companies in Houston who could possibly migrate all their data to the cloud. Got to use Crane Logistics or Crane Worldwide. And so they hired them for 7 figures.
Sweetheart deal.
Prestige.
Which
Worldwide.
would have been more than enough for them to hire their own software developers. And to make matters worse, Crane Worldwide sucks at this. They were missing deadlines. According to one Astros employee, it was a fucking disaster. Here's something else that Luhnow does that's very controversial, is he picks up what he's calling a distressed asset from a team called the Toronto Blue Jays. And that asset was Roberto Osuna. Blue Jays are looking to offload this asset. And I'm using this language because this is the language that they use.
Why was he so distressed? What was making this asset distressed? Were there any market fluctuations or something that were happening?
No, he wasn't injured.
We're referring to him as an asset, and he's distressed.
Wasn't it his arrest record that got him when he was distressed?
It was. He was a distressed asset because he had just been charged with domestic assault. Most teams would be like, I don't know. Having a domestic abuser on the team might like harsh the vibes. But not Luhnow. He was like, guy's a good player. We can get him at a discount. And much to the chagrin of the players and staff, literally everybody who said no when Luhnow asked whether he should do it, he brought him on the team. And this is what he says when people are like, why are you bringing this domestic abuser onto our team? I think one of the reasons I supported this deal is we have an environment that will allow Roberto to succeed. I think the city of Houston, the fact that I was born and raised in Mexico, I understand Mexican culture and I can speak in Spanish to him anytime. And Houston is predominantly Mexican, Hispanic town in terms of the demographics. And I think that also provides opportunities for Roberto down the road. There's going to be some positives that come out of this situation. Like, well, you think you're taking him from French-speaking Torontons? Like,
basically what he said was, he goes, I know this guy beats people up and gets arrested, but I speak Mexican. Therefore, we're going to be okay.
Now,
all right, fella.
Come down to the Houston field and watch Roberto Osuna pitch the 7th and cheer his wife beating ass on. Cheer for him.
Underlay.
That will cure his ailment.
like, what? I'm sorry. What? You can speak Spanish and what? He's up there with the Francophiles in Toronto and that's the reason he's beating his wife?
Well, it's cold in Toronto.
That's so true.
Yeah. Less sunshine.
Luhnow basically ensured that everybody walking into the doors for work at Minute Maid Park hated their lives. And we're going to move the story along here. It's the end of the 2019 season when the team is finishing up their 3rd straight season at the top of the AL West standings, because this is when things really start to fall apart for Luhnow. On November 12th, 2019, when Evan Drellich, a reporter at The Atlantic, author of this book, and I think most importantly, Binghamton University alumni, drops a bombshell. Here's the headline of what he publishes in The Athletic. The Astros stole signs electronically in 2017, part of a much broader issue for the MLB. So the expose was the result of over a year of investigation by Drellich and his reporting partner, Ken Rosenthal. That day, the MLB investigators descended on Houston, interviewed 68 people, 23 players, read through 76,000 emails, Slacks, and phone calls. And Luhnow is terrified. Apparently, he texts all of his coworkers and says, delete text messages.
This guy could have learned like something from Tony Soprano and been like,
nobody learns.
No, go on an outside line, dummy.
Go to the bada bing. Let me make this clear.
Strip clubs. There's so many strip clubs in Houston. In-person conversations, loud strip clubs.
Like, you guys learn nothing. Listen to this.
Fraud Square.
Yeah, the Fraud Square.
Add the strip club to the square.
You're right. We should update the Fraud Square. Opportunity, rationalization, pressure, and strip clubs.
And if you're going to do it, the way to get out of it is the strip club.
Exactly. So yeah, he asked everybody to delete messages, but the problem...
Honey, why do you have so many receipts from the strip club? No, babe. I was just there for the fraud. And they have a great chicken sandwich.
What strip club do you know that gives out receipts?
All of them.
For what? For lap dancing?
Yeah, I got to track my rewards.
They have ATMs.
Oh.
And you can pay
for the ATM.
For the ATM, yeah.
And then you get it like signed off for how many lap dances you got.
The funny part is he deletes the text messages, but his colleagues are like, I'm not deleting this text messages because it was your fault, buddy. So the investigators knew that he was trying to destroy evidence. 2 months after this article is published, Luhnow's fired. Astros were fined the maximum allowable amount under the league constitution, which is $5 million. There's a lot of controversy over this punishment. No players were punished. The Astros got to keep their title. A lot of people thought that the punishment should have been more severe, but you also have to remember that a lot of these players were effectively granted immunity for flipping and telling the truth during the MLB investigation. And of course, you have to deal with the players' unions and all the agreements that you have in place.
Yeah, the players' union is strong, very strong. So,
and Manfred knows that. He's a labor relations guy.
That.
Last piece of corporate gossip is corporate gossip number 8. Jeff Luhnow goes, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. So generally, when an organization is accused of systemic fraud or cheating, it's the CEO and the board of directors who is accountable. Of course, that's not always how things work. We've seen it on this podcast before. Leadership puts pressures on employees to cheat. They create a culture where cheating is accepted. And then when employees cheat, the CEOs throw up their hands and say, oh, few bad apples. But in this case, it's really easy to place the blame squarely on Luhnow's shoulders because everybody hated him. So they were ready to tar and feather this guy. Some say he did know about the trash can scheme. Others say he didn't. But frankly, he's the GM. Like, I find it very unlikely, given what a micromanager this guy is, that he had no idea. Plus, like, what text messages are you deleting, my guy? And the other thing is, like, he should have known. If his team is cheating, someone's going to tell him. Commissioner Manfred, when he fired Luhnow, this is what he wrote to him. Quote, there is more than sufficient evidence that you knew and overwhelming evidence that you should have known that the Astros maintained a sign stealing program. And here is Luhnow's defense. I'm not a cheater. Anyone who has worked closely with me during my 32-year career inside and outside baseball can attest to my integrity.
Just I hate when people combine their I have 40 years of stand-up and other experience. I'm also 40 years old. Like, I have 32 years in this and other stuff. What are you talking about, you idiot?
He says, I did not know rules were being broken. The sign stealing initiative was not planned or directed by baseball management. The trash can banging was driven and executed by players. And the video decoding of signs originated and was executed by lower level employees working with the bench coach. He basically pulled a Jax Taylor. You're no angel, sweetheart. So here's a quote which I think perfectly demonstrates the gossip and the way people are talking about Luhnow at the time. This is a rival executive who says this. He goes, part of it is Jeff just being so condescendingly dispassionate. He was just so fucking smug. He thought he had all the answers. He thought all the answers rested in like basic business efficiency and value engineering principles and not in people who give their lives to the game. And he was not just smug, but unworthy of any modicum of trust. He's very slimy from the get-go. So yeah, I couldn't fucking stand this guy. So what about Jim Crane? As the owner of the Astros, basically the $5 million fine and the bad press were his punishment. And when someone asked him whether he should be accountable, this is what he said. No, I don't think I should be held accountable. I don't think we had any problems. I think if we did have any problems, we would have defined them and we would have moved forward. I don't think there's anything difficult with that. We have one of the best baseball operations in the business and have had a lot of great results. Like, I'm sorry, what?
He sounds like Trump.
You do have problems. You didn't address them. That's why we're here. And I bet you he took the Trump playbook, which is just...
Hey, do you take any responsibility? Got a lot of great people.
Yeah.
A lot of people here. We're doing great things, great wins. It's like, what are you talking about? You
Literally.
didn't say anything.
It reminds me of WWE, where they just ignore, deflect, double down. Do you want to get into the where are they nows before the takeaways?
Yes.
So the Astros were identified in another, though much more widespread in baseball, cheating scandal where pitchers would use like sticky substances to enhance their control of the ball. The Astros went on to win another World Series in 2022. And 6 days after that title returned to Houston, Jim Crane fired the GM that replaced Jeff Luhnow. His name was James Click. There were several reports of drama in the front office. People were saying that Crane actually preferred Luhnow, who was more confident in his decisions. One executive said that Luhnow had, quote, institutional arrogance, which Jim actually thought was a good thing. Crane had actually been sued by a pitcher, this guy named Mike Balsinker. That video that we showed you guys earlier, that was from Mike Balsinker's last game that he played for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2017. That game, he allowed 4 earned runs in a third of an inning. And he alleges that the Astros sign stealing scandal resulted in what ended up being his last appearance in the majors. He sued for damages, but Crane says he can't be sued because the MLB, quote, completely exonerated him. That's Trump again.
That is Trump again.
Total exoneration. Crane even maintains to this day that sign stealing didn't impact the game. He said as recently as 2020 that we had a good team. We won the World Series and we'll leave it at that.
Crane makes his own reality.
Anyways, according to Forbes, the team is now worth $2.4 billion. I think he bought it for like $600 million or something.
Yes, that's right. $660 million.
And Jim Crane's personal fortune is $1.6 billion. As for Jeff Luhnow, he now is the owner himself of 2 sports teams, Cancun FC, a Mexican football club, and Leganes, which is a football club in Spain. The last profile I found of him was published at the end of 2022 by Sports Illustrated. It was titled Jeff Luhnow's Next Act is Soccer. He's basically in exile, but according to him, he has had several offers to return to Major League Baseball, although he didn't say who.
Yeah, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies are looking for a new GM of food and bev.
But he's basically the only major player in the scandal who wasn't scooped up by another team. He's also the only one who's never apologized, and he still maintains that he's done nothing wrong. This is what he says about the 2017 title. He says, I think the Astros built a powerhouse, and it's unfortunate for our fans going through 17 and winning that World Series, and then 2 years later having to have people question that. It's unfortunate, and I wish it never happened.
He could have skipped all that and said, I wish that never happened. And that would have encompassed the entire process. I wish we didn't cheat. I wish people didn't have to go through that. Just, hey, I wish that didn't happen. That would have been such a perfect quote. But no.
He goes on to say, I'll never be one to say that the rule breaking helped or didn't help on the field because I don't know. You don't know. The years before you were doing it, you were last. And then the years after you were doing it, you were first. He goes, I don't think anyone really knows the true answer to that. I do. He says it wasn't right, shouldn't have happened. And I love people using the passive voice. But when you break the rules, and you have to suffer the consequences of that. It's the wrong thing to do. But how much it actually impacted the results, I have no idea. Could it have? In some people's minds. And you're never going to convince them otherwise. So unfortunately, it puts some doubt. It's unfortunate for our fans more than anyone else. Oh my God, bro. With that phrasing, we all know he's full of shit. So you ready for the takeaways?
Yes.
So my takeaway is, like, in many ways, I think this story is similar to any other company we've covered. Here's one quote from a baseball executive. Quote, the closer I get to the world of the 32 owners, many of them are among the worst people in the world, one said. You're never going to go broke betting on their desire to act in pure self-interest, with pure short-sightedness to protect their power, their wealth, at the expense of the good of others in the industry. So basically, it's like they're all pieces of shit and they're all working together in this collective agreement to make them all as much money as humanly possible. And I think there's this line in Manfred's report that is very prescient given where we are with technology these days. He says, no one can dispute that Luhnow's baseball operations department is an industry leader in analytics. But it's very clear to me that the culture of the baseball operations department has been very problematic. At least in my view, the baseball operations department insular culture, the one that valued and rewarded results over other considerations, combined with a staff of individuals who often lacked direction or sufficient oversight, led, at least in part, to an environment that allowed the conduct described in this report to have occurred. And so that's what I think about when I think about all these guys who have business boners for AI and analytics. It's like, yeah, all that's fine and great, but you still need ethical humans making the decisions or it will all be for nothing. Mm-hmm. What takeaways do you have?
Yeah, this is sad for America's pastime. It was a sad story and makes for great corporate gossip. One housekeeping item. there's a guy, his name is Mike Fears. He was a pitcher for the Houston Astros, and he was instrumental in the reporting of Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellich as a whistleblower.
Yeah.
And this guy was a pitcher, and he played for the Astros. He knew what was going on. When he left the Astros to go to Oakland, I think, he started talking about it in the press and saying what they were doing wasn't right. He knew they were doing it, and then he eventually would go on the record with Evan and Ken. And this guy completely risked his career to do this. I mean, baseball has these unwritten rules about what happens in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse, and he was breaking those. But Mike Fears felt like this was wrong. It was against the code of the game, and he should come out and say it. Mike Fears, if you're listening, we appreciate you. And if you're out there and you're looking for a new baseball jersey, you should get a Mike Fears jersey.
Oh, I love that. We should get Mike Fears jersey.
We should get Mike Fears
I love
jerseys.
We love whistleblowers. They are really our heroes on this podcast.
And it's so rare that we're able to buy their sweat.
Yes. All whistleblowers should have merch.
Yeah.
I would. Sorry, let me look into the camera. Mike tells me all whistleblowers should have merch. And that's our take here on the Corporate Gossip Podcast. Are you ready to wrap it?
Let's wrap.
That was a great episode. What do you think, Mike?
It was very fun, very informative, very to the point.
Would you give it 5 stars, 4 stars?
I'd give it 3.5 bangs on a trash can. But out of 3.5.
Oh, great. Yeah. Guys, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so by clicking the link in our show notes to buy us a coffee. If you want to leave a rating and review for free, if you want to give us 5 bangs on a trash can, you can do so by leaving one on Apple Podcast or Spotify. If you want to follow us on Instagram or TikTok, that's at Corporate Gossip. You can I think it's at Corporate Gossip Pod. If you want to email us, you can do it at becca@nighttoast.com or adam@nighttoast.com. To buy the book, check out our bookshop.org storefront. And all the other links, including the original article that Evan Drellich had written, is also in the Substack, along with all the pictures that we talked about from this episode. Anything else?
That is it. Rather than buy us a coffee, buy us a hot dog.
Buy us a hot dog. That's right. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Adam. And we'll see you guys next week.